Hello, I'm Tootight Lautrec and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. Here we are again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainders section of an unnamed local library which may or may not have some stone-faced lions involved in a stare-off with any unlucky pedestrians who happen to be sauntering by. And I'm just busting at the seams, as you can see, to bring you Sonnets 35 and 36, where we learn, once again, that breaking up is hard to do. Now, it does seem that with this particular sequence of sonnets, as in life, once we hit 30, all hell breaks loose. And at least that's what I've heard. Now, everybody knows that a real lady doesn't mention her age, but everyone knows also that I'm no lady. So suffice it to say that I'm somewhere between 29 and 5 or 6,000 years old, which just, I'd say that simply because I've seen some things, and indeed I do know that breaking up is hard to do. Now, if we're going to look at these sonnets as the progression of a story, and I say why not, because here they are in this order. If we think about Sonnet 33 and 34, we see the storm clouds rolling in on our happy couple, or a couple in which at least one of the partners is somewhat happy and another is not quite so happy. But as I say, let's look at them as the progression of a story. We have the also opportunity to read them as if they were separate entities, and although there is much to be said for isolated pleasures, these sonnets do seem to scream out for company. Read them as a continuing narrative, which is what we're going to do today, or we could also, the third option is read them as a dramatic monologue or a trialogue, as the case may be, or even a daisy chain-alogue, whatever your preference is. There could be conversations between two people, between three people, between many different characters, but that's something that we'll have to decide as we go along, or if anyone is going to be staging them in the future. So, since we've gotten into the 30s, I've been pairing these sonnets up two at a time because, one, these sonnets do seem to be conducive to pairing up. They do seem to be coming to us in pairs that speak to one another. And the second advantage of looking at them two at a time is that despite all appearances, I'm not getting any younger. And if we'd like to get through to Sonnet 150, I'd like to do that before I lose my youthful charms. So 35 and 36 is what we'll be looking at today. As I said, it does seem as though these are a progression of the story that's been going on since we hit the 30s. And even we could say at the very beginning we have the poet speaking to a young lover, encouraging him or her to procreate, and then things get a bit hot and heavy around 18 or 19, and it seems that there actually could be a love relationship between them. Indeed, it does seem that they've consummated their relationship, and then they hit a rough spot in the 30s. So, Sonnets 35 and 36. Let's dive in to 35. I'm using my handy-dandy Penguin Shakespeare sonnets. No more be grieved at that which thou hast done. Roses have thorns, and silver fountains mud. Clouds and eclipses stain both moon and sun, and loathsome canker lives in sweetest bud. All men make faults, and even I in this, authorizing thy trespass with compare, myself corrupting, salving thy amiss. excusing thy sins more than thy sins are. For to thy sensual fault I bring in sense. The adverse party is thy advocate, and 'gainst myself a lawful plea commence. Such civil war is in my love and hate, that I an accessory needs must be to that sweet thief which sourly robs from me. So, if we go through it line by line, no more be grieved at that which thou hast done. Someone's done someone wrong, and he's making it very clear, or I'll say he. The poet is making it very clear. But he's saying, don't worry about it. Roses have thorns, silver fountains mud. All things in nature have imperfections. Clouds and eclipses stain both moon and sun. They blot out the moon and the sun. And loathsome canker, which he gets a bit more... loathsome canker lives in sweetest bud. So even in your sweet bud, there's some loathsome canker going on, whatever it is that the lover did. All men make faults, and it could just be a generic men, but he says all men make faults, and even I in this, so apparently this is a man, authorizing thy trespass with compare. So I've excused your trespasses by comparing them to lesser deeds. And in doing this, myself corrupting, salving thy amiss, I've been smoothing over the things that you've done wrong and saying that maybe it's my fault. Excusing thy sins more than thy sins are. For every sin that you commit, I make up 2 more excuses for you. Every 2 sins, I make up 4 excuses for you, and I've been doing that. So even I'm not perfect because I'm doing this for you. The adverse party is thy advocate. You've wronged me, and I'm making up excuses for you. I'm your advocate, and you're the adverse party. And 'gainst myself a lawful plea commence. Such civil war is my love and hate. It's warring in me. I love you, I hate you. It's sort of this feedback loop that gets going here. That I, an accessory, needs must be to that sweet thief which sourly robs from me. I'm making up excuses, I'm advocating against myself, and I'm an accessory to the fact because I'm allowing you to do it. And this line, basically the first quarto is, don't worry about the dastardly deeds you've done to me. We all make mistakes. Quatrain 2, the first quatrain, the second quatrain says, yeah, we all make mistakes, even me. My biggest mistake was forgiving you. My next biggest mistake was trying to make excuses for you. And then another mistake was making more excuses for your sins than was either necessary or warranted or was even intelligent on my part. Quatrain 3 brings in the lawyers. And this is a great quatrain. That one line, for to the sensual fault I bring in sense. Basically he's saying, you whore. For the sensual fault, you've been stepping out on me, and I know what you've been doing. But I bring in sense. I have a cool head about it. But it's also this in sense. Sensual and sense is a very nice play on words, but in sense also, may ring close to another word like innocence, saying you're the guilty one and I'm the innocent one. You're all sexy body, and I'm the intellectual. So, which, truth be told, might be good enough reason for our sexy young thing to seek a little something on the side. So it's basically sexy little thing versus dusty old professor. And then, once we get to the lawyer part, thy adverse party is thy advocate. It gets all like, kind of like divorce talk here. Like, things are getting pretty serious. You wronged me, but I defended you. And even though it goes against me, I hate myself for loving you, and I hate you. And the couplet is basically, I blame myself, but not really. So, pretty strong words in Sonnet 35. And then, right after comes Sonnet 36. Sonnet 36, in which the first line is, let me confess that we two must be twain. Ouch. I mean, basically, that's it. We're done. That's announced in the first line. And so whoever is saying this is the straw that broke the beast with two backs. So whoever is saying it is kind of getting the upper hand. We two must be twain. We who were once one are now going to be two from this point forward. So on every level, like even if this were some sort of puritanical friendship, it's saying we were a team, but we are a team no longer. But if it were a sexual relationship, it's even more cutting, because think about that, where we become one flesh. I have been inside you and you have been inside me, or possibly one way or the other. And that will no longer happen. And that's devastating when especially in terms of, if you've ever been cheated on by a lover, the obsessive thinking about what the other person has done with their body and another body that you will no longer be able to do with their body and your body, it can play a head trip with you. But even if this were some sort of chaste romantic love, where my heart lives in your heart, even though we've never done the deed, our hearts are no longer one. We're two separate people, and that's really ouch, 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 all the way around, ouch. So whoever's saying this is taking the upper hand and is announcing that we are not going to be two any longer. Let's go through it and hear how it goes. After this, you've done me wrong, 35, but I stood up for you against my better judgment. And then 36. Let me confess that we two must be twain, although our undivided loves are one. So shall those blots that do with me remain without thy help by me be borne alone. In our two loves there is but one respect, though in our lives a separable spite, which, though it alter not love's sole effect, yet doth it steal sweet hours from love's delight. I may not evermore acknowledge thee, lest my bewailed guilt should do thee shame. Nor thou with public kindness honor me, unless thou take that honor from thy name. But do not so. I love thee in such sort, as thou, being mine, mine is thy good report. Again, ouch. So, quatrain 1 is saying we are no longer one. Although our undivided loves are one, we did have something for one another, we are no longer. So shall those blots, which is a pretty good word, with the hard B and the hard T. Blots is a pretty strong, so shall those blots that do with me remain, without thy help by me be borne alone. On your own, buddy. The second quatrain is, we tried but it didn't work out. In our two loves there is but one respect. So we did love one another again. Though in our lives a separable spite, we are sharing this breaking up bit, which, though it alter not love's sole effect, we can't deny that we were in love, yet doth it steal sweet hours from love's delight. Kaput, it's over. Quatrain 3 is very interesting. So if we're thinking of this as 35 and 36, the poet speaking to the lover. If it's the poet talking in quatrain 3, he's saying, I may not evermore acknowledge thee, which is a pretty strong thing to say. I may not evermore acknowledge thee, lest my bewailed guilt should do thee shame. Nor thou with public kindness honor me, unless thou take that honor from thy name. which, if it's the poet, is saying, I'm not going to tell people how much I tried to forgive you, because that would only be me being shady to you. It would make you look bad if I did that, because you were. And don't be telling people about how nice it was of me to forgive you, because you'd only look bad talking yourself down, as you should, you filthy whore. And come to the couplet, but do not so. I love thee in such sort as thou being mine. Mine is thy good report. If it's the poet saying it, it's don't do it. Don't talk about it to anybody. The only reason you have any smidgen, any mote of any kind of a good name is only because I loved you. Now, say that Sonnet 35 was the lover saying, you know, don't worry, everybody does something wrong, but, you know, I've done the worst thing because I've forgiven you. But, you know, it pains me, I love you, but I hate you, you know, but it's kind of like he forgives him anyway. And it does seem, again, like two males here, because the all men have faults, and even I in this, and he's comparing the faults to something that the lover has done. So it does seem like two men are being talked to. So the lover is saying this, taking the high road, saying, oh, you know, I forgave you, but love and hate. And the lover turns around and says, let me confess that we two must be twain. That's a different kind of story. That's a pretty jarring thing. The lover is taking the high road, the poet is taking the high road, and the lover is saying, forget it, it's over. So when we get to quatrain 3, if the lover is saying this, I may not evermore acknowledge thee, the lover would be saying to the older, sensible, intellectual, the dusty old professor, the sweet, sexy young thing is saying, I'm not going to tell people we dated, because if they knew I cheated on you, it'd only make you look bad. Likewise, don't tell anyone you dated me, because that would make you look bad, because who wants to be known as a cuckold? And the couplet is, so don't do it. It's only because you had a sweet young thing like me to play around with, hanging on your arm, that you have any kind of a good reputation. So, don't tell anyone about it. Either way you look at it, ouch. Torn to shreds, just like my dress. Now, as I said, I do believe that 35, well, definitely the narrator is a male. And 36, it does seem like they are in Congress with one another. So it could be that it's a man speaking to a woman, and the woman is speaking back if it's a dialogue and not a continuation. But it does seem to me that it's two males who are the subjects of these two sonnets. The dramatic possibilities of these sonnets seem endless to me. I could imagine two people at opposite ends of the stage screaming the sonnets at one another, maybe even one line from each as they go along. Or it could be some other thing that maybe you can figure out how to stage. But it does look like this is the end. It's over. Kaput. No more. Goodbye. We two must be twain. That's it. And yet, it's sonnet number 36 out of 154. So something tells me that perhaps this is not the end. Maybe there's something more that we need to find out. And as we do so, maybe you should tune in to the next episode where we will find out what might be going on in the future after the apparent end here. So, meanwhile, as you go out into the world, remember that even if you've just been dumped, it's happened to all of us. Maybe. If it hasn't happened yet, I hope it never does, but if it does happen, if it has happened to you, if you've just been dumped, just remember the world is still full of wonder. Do yourself a favor. Look around, pay attention. It does help ease the pain. Until we meet again, I'm Tootight Lautrec.